In the latter half of 2017, I was having a personal awakening. It had been 1 year since I went back to school, which was 11 years since I had graduated high school. I never did really well in high school for reasons I'll get into later, but this time I was maintaining a solid 4.0 GPA somehow. I was learning so much about myself and what I was truly capable of, but that came with the scary realization that if I was going to be truly happy with my life, I was going to have to push the reset button. And not like a soft reset when you want to start a boss fight over. I mean the factory reset on your PC kind of start over where your hard drive gets wiped and everything. I needed to risk everything for the hope that I would achieve something far more for myself than I ever could have dreamed of. Before taking this leap though, I was really hesitating. Understandably so, but I knew what needed to be done and I was looking for ways to potentially explore doing it. To be clear though, I was always keeping one foot rooted in that toxic safety that I had grown used to. It was during this time that I also really got into raiding in Final Fantasy XIV. I had played Final Fantasy XI for 7 years and played Final Fantasy XIV since its closed alpha for 1.0. You can bet I'll talk about that at some point in the future. I secured my legacy status, which was given to players who were still willing to pay very early in the failed MMO's life, and I stuck with Final Fantasy XIV through its relaunch as Realm Reborn and beyond. Despite all of this long-term experience though, I was terrified of doing endgame content, either in Final Fantasy XI or XIV, and a big reason was the social aspect. Lots of personal issues made me very socially adverse and often paralyzed with social anxiety. The social stuff aside, I also put huge pressure on myself with this expectation to perform well. Well, not just perform, but to do it perfectly. So, needless to say, it was a big deal for me that I was not just raiding, but raiding with a core group who I was growing to love. And the whole reason I was able to do this was because I was putting into practice the changes I knew I needed to make for myself as a person. I quickly learned that my fears towards endgame raiding was actually unfounded. It turned out I was always really good at Final Fantasy XIV. Sorry, don't mind me, I'm just tooting my own horn here. Aside from my raw mechanical skill towards the game, I also had solid teamwork and communication skills with my co-tank and spiritual brother, Brandon, who did some amazing stuff with me in our raid group. My growing as a person was helping me grow as a player, and this was a huge realization for me to finally realize that everything in our lives is connected. Taking care of your personal health is the best way to get better at everything you do. And at this point, I'm sure you're thinking, hey Foxy, WTF? I thought this was a Monster Hunter video. What's with all this FFM personal crap? Shh. Chill. Context is important. Context is always important. So, riding high on my success with my co-tank Brandon, he casually mentioned to me about Monster Hunter coming out in December. He had been a longtime fan of the series and was apparently going nuts over the things this new one would implement. Monster Hunter, where have I... Oh yeah, that really crappy PSP game my friend tried getting me into a long time ago that I played once and never touched again because it was garbage. No! Brandon said. Well, yes, I can see why you would think that, but I promise it's so much more than that. He explained that this one was going to be the most accessible and well-made Monster Hunter yet. He also offered to play it alongside me to help guide me and make it as fun as possible. Needless to say, I was skeptical, but Brandon is my spiritual brother, and with how in sync we were in our tanking in Final Fantasy XIV, I felt, in the least, I should give it an honest try and see if I could find some magic about it to grip me. Plus, I had just recently gotten a PS4 and the demo was coming out in a week or so, reluctantly, I downloaded the demo when it came out sometime in August, if I recall, and well... I was hooked. It's hard exactly to put into words the overwhelming culmination of each well-crafted part of Monster Hunter, the flourish of which sends you into a cascade of adrenaline and dopamine that sticks with you for years. The beta ran for only a few days over a weekend, and I know, between the 2 times they gave access to that demo prior to the full game's release, I easily spent 75 hours or more on it. Which is impressive because it was a limited access demo over the course of 2 weekends. I had many sleepless all-nighters, please don't judge me. I was just so hungry for the full meal waiting for me after the small appetizer this demo provided. Every aspect that makes Monster Hunter great honestly deserves its own video to really flesh out its brilliance. For that reason, I'm going to try and outline my emotional connection to Monster Hunter and touch briefly on its core concepts in this video, but I want to use this as a jumping off point with the goal of making videos later to really explore every aspect of this amazing series. Anyway, so 75 hours into a demo, I was starving for more. So much so I went back to that crappy PSP game on my PS Vita 9 years after it was gifted to me and started playing it earnestly. I felt like whatever misconceptions I had about the game had been lifted like a veil, and behind it was the grand, wonderful majesty that was this gem of a PSP game. It was flawed, sure, and it definitely was lacking 9 years worth of game design progress that had come to the series since, but still, stripped away of all that was the same core, the same soul that I had found in that demo. It resonated and shook me to my very essence. I hit a wall with Tigrex and wasn't able to overcome him. But before I could try and burst through that wall, Brandon gifted me his 3DS and copy of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. I effortlessly spent 350 hours in 4U completing every single solo village quest, and I was just barely stepping foot into multiplayer quests when Monster Hunter World launched. And from that moment on, my life changed forever. I lead with all of this context at the start to kind of help paint a background, so that as we go forward, you can truly understand exactly how meaningful Monster Hunter is to me. Not just as a game series I now love and cherish, but as the catalyst for the best years of my life. 4 months after World's release, I finally took the plunge to make all those changes in my personal life I mentioned earlier. I had to sell almost all my possessions to do so, including that 3DS and copy of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate Brandon gave me. I cut ties from almost everyone in my life who were toxic for me, even though I still somehow loved them deeply. And even though I knew that I wouldn't see the true rewards of my decision for probably years to come, I knew it was the right thing to do. And it has been both the hardest and easiest thing to do in my life. Make no mistake though, these changes required me to overcome challenges that left me feeling drained and exhausted in ways I never had known before. But it didn't matter because as soon as the rewards hit, I felt my spirit so full of life that I felt capable of even 10 times more. Which brings us to one core and perhaps the most important aspect to Monster Hunter, which is simply to overcome. Monster Hunter is a game about hunting monsters. Do you see what they did there? So clever. Every encounter with a monster is essentially its own epic boss battle between you and it. Once you attain victory, you can take the materials gathered from the monster itself to craft upgrades to weapons and armor. Then you go out and fight something bigger and more ferocious than what you fought last. Rinse and repeat. Keen listeners will realize, hey Foxy, this sounds repetitive. : / And I won't lie to you, it is. But so is every video game you have ever played. I'm sure many of you have heard the phrase that good games create a really good 30-second game loop, and then trick the player into not realizing it's a loop. And there's a ton of truth to that. But what this really means is that the gameplay itself, not necessarily the material rewards that come from the game, needs to be so good that a player wants and craves the feeling of the gameplay itself for its own sake. And it's for this reason that I can say, over the course of all 5,000 hours of Monster Hunter that I've played, I've never once felt like it was grinding. Not like I do with so many things in other games. And I believe there are 2 main reasons for this. The first main reason I never felt like I was grinding is that the complexity of combat is some of the deepest I've ever experienced. Let's start with the weapons. Each of the 14 weapons have entirely unique gameplay experiences, each with their own nuance, quirks, animations, and abilities to learn and master. Each weapon feels like its own game of sorts and constantly provides a source of personal exploration and experimentation. And all the weapons just feel good to play. At first they may feel clunky, as I have heard a lot of people say, but given just enough time, you'll start intuitively comboing attacks and how to exploit openings like second nature. Like someone actually learning to master a martial art, your time spent playing directly relates to the mastery and proficiency you achieve in-game. Matching those 14 weapons against each monster creates a unique experience itself. The monsters are some of the best encounter design I have ever seen, and are essentially characters themselves, each bolstering a rich diversity of attacks and aesthetics, so that even after fighting the same monster 100 times, you'll still be learning new tricks about how you can approach and engage it in different ways to improve your hunting ability. You'll come to appreciate each monster for how it feels just to fight them. Every engagement is its own rhythm to dance to, and there's no end to the amount of skill you can achieve. And every moment of learning those monsters and how to use your weapon feels exhilarating. The second main reason I feel Monster Hunter never feels like a grind is its constant sense of tension from its masterfully crafted difficulty curve. From the very start, you are presented with challenges that you are asked to tackle. The game immediately creates an internal sense of, I can probably do this. Maybe. Right? When this feeling hits may change depending on what level of skill you bring to the game before you play, but inevitably you'll encounter a scenario just like this. Your first hunt is an exhilarating rush of tension, close calls, miraculous attacks, and celebrating every time you do something cool and cinematic. After a few hunts like this, you might feel the tension start to fade. Clearly, you're a badass and have started to get this game under your thumb. Your friends all told you this game was hard, but Baroth, Giratotis, and Tobi-Kadachi leave you with only some discomfort, but you're more or less handling yourself just fine. Hey, good on you. That's something to be proud of. But then, something changes. A moment comes that shatters your reality. When this moment arrives is different for every hunter, and for different reasons depending on your weakness as a player. But suddenly, Anjanath has just come along and wrecked your crap. Or if not Anjanath, then most likely Diablos. Your entire ego is left destroyed. Surely, you think, I can kill him, right? You try again and do a little better, but still no luck. Battered and broken, you head back to town with your tail between your legs. You take a break and maybe look online and talk to some of your friends to see if you might be able to figure out a way to get past Diablos. You find out your friend got past him and is in something called high rank. Well, if they can do it, surely you can. So, you hop back on the game, you read about how to make your own traps from some Reddit threads. Awesome. Practice your weapon of choice a bit after watching a YouTube video from Gaijin Hunter or Eric's. Shout out to you guys, you're awesome. Please notice me, senpai. You also realize there are some upgrades you missed for your weapon you can get by fighting the easier stuff you've already taken down. You still haven't upgraded your armor either, from the starting gear. And there's this Jagras piece that has something called Fortify on it. Sounds pretty useful. Please note this is an amazing game design choice that I'll talk about in another video. This time, you're ready. You've got the items, the gear, the practice, and you look at that Diablos with a sly grin before starting the attack. This time you're keeping your own, effortlessly dodging and weaving between attacks almost like time has slowed down. You start asking yourself, what was even so difficult about this in the first place? Now this Diablos is just putting in your... Oh, crap. You fainted. Hey, but no worries, though. You got Fortify. Now you're gonna get some extra power to help you with your next 2 rounds. Round 2, here we go. You catch the Diablos eating to get its stamina back, and you go in for some big hits. Heck yeah! That'll teach him to underestimate you, and you got a mount. Yippee-ki-yay, Fulgur Anjanath. Sorry, got a little carried away there. It's just, you're kicking so much ass. The fight is starting to feel like it's going on forever, but surely you must be close. You only have 1 feint, and you've been hammering him pretty hard, and then you see it. Aww, he's limping. This is it. This is when you beat Diablos. You quickly change camps to catch him underground and re-engage. You were so excited you forgot to heal and second feint. Okay. More Fortify is just going to help you, and by this point the Diablo should be back at its nest sleeping, and you're prepared for this. You have your bombs, you clever gamer, you. And with all this damage, you know it's going to kill the monster almost immediately. You place the bombs, light the wyvern fire, and... uh-oh. He's not dead. And this is when you promptly crap your... No. You got this. You know it. You feel it deep down. If you can just hold on a bit more, concentrate, and be patient, you can do this. After waking up, he starts charging you. No big deal. You've seen it before. You get out of the way, no problem. But suddenly, he disappears. He's got some new tricks. Doesn't matter though. You're staying safe, paying attention. Now you know what he's gonna do. You realize at the end of one of his charges, you could probably go in for a big hit. So you wait. This moment right here is everything that Monster Hunter is all about. Monster Hunter, to me, does this better than any other video game I have ever experienced. Even completing raid tiers with my friends in Final Fantasy XIV was never as satisfying as these moments in Monster Hunter. I've contemplated why this might be, and I think it's because, well, it's all on me. You can play with others in a group of 4, but I wanted to start solo before going online, just, you know, to practice and not make a fool of myself. And honestly, I recommend to all new players to do this to some degree. It was all just me. My struggle, my failure, and my wall to break. All the failed attempts that taught me lessons about how I should approach the game. All the hunting that went into getting the gear, getting the weapons upgraded. The practice from those hunts. All the useful items I gathered on those hunts. This was all mine to own, and it led to this single, glorious moment of triumph. My moment of triumph. With nothing but my skill, resourcefulness, and preparation. And I know for a fact I'm not alone in this experience. I've put a link in the description for HeyJ's channel and his Twitch channel. HeyJ created a video in response to the Monster Hunter Rise demo in which he called the game clunky and terrible. And the honest fan reaction from the Monster Hunter community actually convinced him to try and play World with some different ideas in mind of how to approach it. And as a little experiment, he decided to go ahead and stream himself playing Monster Hunter World on Twitch and making journals on his YouTube channel covering his journey from Monster Hunter newbie who kinda really didn't like the game to someone who earnestly enjoys it. The basic inspiration for that Diablo story comes directly from his experiences in the game, watching him struggle, learning to overcome, and seeing the joy that actually came to his face when he was finally able to break that wall. You just gotta watch it, there's something magical about it. Hello, Foxy here. I'm kind of making this as I'm editing, and just wanted to articulate that I propositioned my boyfriend to give me this footage for these hunts that you're watching, and as much as I made this little story that I wanted to kind of cater to the idea of overcoming, you know, your first wall, getting to actually watch him play as someone who had only, up until I asked him, got up to Kuluyaku, was kind of super inspiring. Like, you know, his gameplay wasn't the best, and he's still learning, obviously. He's only maybe put in, at this point now, 3 to 4 hours into the game, but getting to watch him go through literally every monster up to Diablos and learn and overcome, like, every time he did something cool or, you know, new or stringed a combo that he was struggling with before, it was the same thing I'm talking about. Watching someone actually get to overcome and learn, and his sense of engagement and joy from it. That's what Monster Hunter is all about. Monster Hunter took away my fear of failure and taught me how to overcome any hurdle. That lesson is something I've held dearly ever since. Not just in a video game, obviously, but as a principle and a core philosophy of my life. I can confidently say that Monster Hunter gave me the courage to get to where I am today, right now. It's at this point, I want to finish my story and try and tie all of this together. I should note, content warning from here for blood, surgery, medical trauma, things like that. You can skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid all of that stuff. I'd appreciate it if you listened, but I understand if it's too much for you to handle. Also, for this part, I'm just going to have some B-roll of me fighting some stuff in Monster Hunter World that I recorded, so feel free to look away or just listen. I don't have any relevant video footage for this part. This last year has quite honestly been a personal hell for me. I was scheduled to finally have a surgery I spent my whole life working towards at the end of March of 2020. This surgery would finally correct something I had with me since birth that made it incredibly difficult for me to live and thrive and be social. There were so many things I needed to do before I could even attempt this though, like losing 160 pounds, finding a better place to live so I could recover from surgery, and so many more. But as I'm sure you are all aware, March 2020 is when things around the world started to go a little bit nutty. My surgery was canceled because of that, and I was devastated with no idea when I could actually get it rescheduled. But ultimately I learned to make peace with this, and learned to be okay with myself in a way I never had before, at least for the time being. Even though I eventually would need this surgery, I could still make the most of the time I had now. Soon in May, I actually got a call that they could schedule me again and have it as early as June 1st. I honestly wept tears of joy and counted the days till I was finally able to have this corrected. And when June 1st came, I was there, stuck full of IVs, smiling from ear to ear despite about to go into surgery, just because I was happy to have my first and most important surgery. When suddenly my doctor came and told me that due to a scheduling error, we had to cancel and postpone to June 23rd. I was immediately heartbroken, but also just fine. I let myself feel bad for a day, then got back to just enjoying life again. June 23rd, finally, truly the day of the surgery, for real, I promise this time. And for a short while after that surgery, everything was the best it had ever been. I felt at peace in a way I never had, and in just a few months' time of recovery, I could take the world by storm. Only a week and a half later, the surgical site had gotten severely infected. It somehow went unnoticed and ended with me passing out from blood loss. From this point on, things got hard. Over the course of 7 months, I've had 3 surgeries to correct complications from the first. Each one promised to be the last, but so far, 2 of the 3 have failed, and this most recent one seems to have taken, fingers crossed, but that remains to truly be seen. I was left feeling broken and deformed from all that they had to cut away just to try and make sure everything could close up right so I could heal somewhat properly. For a while, I had what my therapist described as PTSD-like symptoms from all the ping-ponging on thinking I was okay, then not okay, then okay, then not okay, then okay, then you get the idea. I counted 65 different needles all stuck in my arm for blood work or shots or some other thing. 21 IVs for various reasons at my hospital visits, and I'm not even mentioning the details that are really bad because I'm trying to spare you guys the worst of it, because I promise it gets really bad. I'm going to, at some point, have one final surgery to try and fix everything up cosmetically and a few miscellaneous other things, of course. But before then, I've been given a list of things they need me to do and requirements to meet yet again before I can even have this done. Irony, right? That my reward for all the time and hard work I put into at least just finally having the surgery was more work to finally get another surgery. The difference being that this time is an overwhelming awareness that I've still lost things that I'll never get back. Forever. Gone. Life is unfair, let me tell you. But, in the midst of all this pain, though, there was always hope. There is always hope. Because just like Monster Hunter, each of these challenges asked more of me than I thought possible to give, and each challenge that arose, I met it and overcame, and I'm still overcoming it now. An old friend, a few months ago, in the midst of all of this, reached out to me, and aside from catching up on all my fun for the last few months, we struck up a conversation about the fun we had in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. We reminisced about the good times and both got super hype over Monster Hunter Rise about to come out. In preparation for Rise coming out, they had just gotten a Switch, and with it, Generations Ultimate, and asked if I had it. And I did, of course. At this point, I'm a thorough enough Monster Hunter fan, I think. But I had never gotten past the Village High rank when I first started playing. Well, they said, what do you say you start a new character with me and see if we can finish G rank together? The thing is, just like I used to be terrified of endgame content and raiding in Final Fantasy XIV, I was terrified of G rank. To be clear, I have cleared all of Master Rank, which is Iceborne's version of G rank, solo, with 2 exceptions. But to me, G rank in the classic Monster Hunter games was a whole different beast entirely. Even though I spent over 2,500 hours between various Monster Hunter games at this point, I always saw G rank as this tough-as-nails proving ground if you tried to do it solo. In classic Monster Hunter, if you don't know, G rank quests, and all hub quests for that matter, are balanced for multiplayer. No scaling to playing solo. And I always found it difficult to do enough damage in classic Monster Hunter just to kill the monsters in hub quests. And so, in light of my friend asking me this question, I thought long and hard about everything that I've shared in this video so far. And I came to a decision. I replied to my friend, yeah, let's beat G rank. And we did. Or rather, I did. Eventually my friend and I had to stop playing together for life reasons early on to our climb. But I had done enough farming in G rank by myself while we were climbing to know I could handle the rest easily. I farmed to get a weapon with enough power to carry me all the way to the end and beyond. I farmed armor that had skills that would help me achieve the most output I could. And while it took me a while, I finally had soloed my way to the end. And just like the hunter I described earlier defeating their first Diablos, I felt the same tension, adrenaline, exhilaration, fear, and failure. Since having cleared the G rank in Generations Ultimate, it became clear that I love this franchise in a way that is profoundly impactful and meaningful for me. Realizing I still had so much of the Monster Hunter series to explore, I have since been on a journey to complete as much of the Monster Hunter franchise as I can. I went back to that crappy PSP game where I ran into that wall against Tigrex. There was something surreal and powerful seeing that same Tigrex again that I couldn't beat nearly 4 years ago, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I failed the quest again on my first time revisiting it. Freedom Unite has its own nuances and quirks to learn compared to every other Monster Hunter, but I'm glad I failed that quest, because it served as a humble reminder that we always have more to learn when we play Monster Hunter, and every new lesson comes with its own delicious satisfaction of victory. It took a little doing, but I finally broke my first wall from 4 years ago. It felt like a chapter of my life finally had some closure. But as the page turns to end one chapter, there is always a new chapter starting on the other side. At the time of writing this, I have completed all of Portable Third, and cleared G rank for 3 Ultimate and 4 Ultimate. My goal was to get through G rank on Freedom Unite as well before Rise came out, but I wanted to make sure I got this video out for Rise's release. Regardless, when I'm done with all that I want to do in Rise, until Rise Ultimate, of course, I will get back to playing classic Monster Hunter and continue my journey towards becoming a better hunter. I wouldn't go so far as to say that Monster Hunter itself is the reason I've been able to make it through this personal hell of mine. But I will say that Monster Hunter has been a way for me to express my philosophy and approach to life as of late. A philosophy that first started to take root with the first Monster Hunter I ever played, and what it taught me. As I struggle, fail, learn, and then succeed in Monster Hunter, so too do I in my personal life and vice versa. To act like this last year has only been pain and suffering would be a flat-out lie though. Because at the end of each of these incredibly difficult life challenges has been rewards beyond anything I could have ever asked for. And if you'll actually indulge me a moment, I kind of want to celebrate those with you. My boyfriend, who I live with, has shown me more love and support than I ever felt worthy enough to receive. He is a dream come true of mine, and unquestionably has been the foundation that I have been able to stand on to get through all this. I met him shortly before everything went to crap in 2020, and I can honestly say that all my hard work leading up to my surgery is why I'm able to have this happy and healthy relationship with him. I love you, hun. The lessons I've learned about myself over these last 7 months because of all this hardship has proven that I'm honestly kind of a badass. That I've always kind of been a badass, and I will always be a badass. If I can truly survive this, then I fear nothing anymore. And to live life without true fear? Well, that's kind of a gift of itself. I've always had self-confidence issues, and it might not appear that way up front or through this video, but deep down I've always doubted myself. Or rather, used to doubt myself. Lastly, through various interconnecting circumstances from all of these complications, I learned, actually not that long ago, that I had spent my entire life with untreated and undiagnosed ADHD. A few weeks ago I finally started treatment and, oh, gosh, how do you even describe the profound difference? It's like I spent my whole life playing on Dante Must Die mode, and now that the difficulty is set to normal, I feel like I'm on easy mode, or rather very easy mode. It's actually much more nuanced than that, but I'll go into more detail later, because gosh dang, this video is already too long. It's also because of this ADHD that I struggled in school my whole life, as I mentioned before, and so many other things. So to finally have this corrected feels like the door to my future is limitless with infinite potential. Yeah. And it's because of these things I just shared that I have decided to finally do something I've always wanted to do but never had the courage, self-belief, or drive to do. Produce YouTube content. In fact, the whole reason you're even seeing this video, which if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching my crappy video, is strictly because of all the hurdles I've overcome and the rewards I got along the way. So no, I don't intend for this to be my only video, not in the least. And to give a rough idea of things that I'd like to cover in the future, I kind of want to create content about reviewing the Monster Hunter movie, critical game analysis of the Monster Hunter series, more in-depth reasons why the Monster Hunter series is great, areas that Monster Hunter can be improved, some of my favorite stuff about Monster Hunter, possible Monster Hunter Rise content, and so much more. I also have no doubt that this will be a huge learning experience for me, so sorry for any crappiness along the way, but I think by now it's obvious that even if I stumble and fail along the way, I'm ready to learn and grow as a content creator and as a person. This is one of my many new challenges that I'd like to overcome, and any feedback that you have to offer, I would love and appreciate along the way. Whether it's with likes, comments, or even just a view, I truly thank you for taking the time to watch my content. If you really enjoyed this and want to join me on this journey, then be sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.